This book is a book of poems on photographs, and they're photographs from the early 20th century. The US occupied the Philippines from 1900 to 1945, and I got obsessed with these photographs, and I wrote poems about them. I thought I'd share some of these photographs, so I hope this works. I printed these photographs, old school style, and I carried them around for like 5 years. um, Literally hand carried in too many plane rides. The American period in the Philippines is usually called peacetime. Obviously, that was not exactly accurate. Things were more complicated than that. The photographs, though, are quite beautiful, even if they are evidence of a very difficult time. Maybe let's stay here. This is one of my favorite. The history of towns is always the history of looking back. Where is the bell tower? There is a tree and it still stands. A family is only as good as the father who is gone. A brother with a son. A daughter who is only as good as a vase of roses, which meant very good. I never lived to see, which did not mean that I had died before the city had a train that would have allowed me to cross the length of an island and stare at the sea. But there I stood. In the time it takes for the shadow of the world to reach the shadow of the knee of the woman sitting in the park under a tree, a photograph is developed. Drip, drip, splash, then all right, then a dry mount against the wet, wet grass. When the city's architects ask what could be done with the past, they didn't anticipate glass. They believed the ocean, with its endless shimmer of always, would make the dame denizens of the city sick from squinting at the sea. What reprieve the streets could be, what rain falling endlessly from the eaves of shop houses as a line of trees becomes the token gesture nature makes to signify an elsewhere here, where a woman slowly rises to become the shadow of me. There is a river and then there is a man. There is a skirt and then there is a woman, 3 women, their feet dipped in the water. A dam is built in Bolok Bolok and it is called progress. A dam is built in Bolok Bolok and families on weekends congregate in circles to watch the show of water spilling from the mouth of a river to the mouth of a wall. It is magic, says the girl, standing at the edge of the pool, tilting her head to the right. It is magic, says the man, holding his arms above the water, waving his arms above a stream that has been conjured first out of a bush, then out of a cliff, then out of a pipe that runs through miles across a city, miles across through towns where the corn is planted and the harvest reaped, where the fish is snared into a net and then hauled into a ship, where a church is built coral by coral until it is deemed a fitting place to worship. Ta-da! Magic happens by a trick of light and a gesture repeated, says the man who stands at the cusp of where a jet of water falls into a pool and creates out of his hands a spectacle out of an altogether natural thing. A woman holds a cup made of coconut husk into the air. A daughter smiles her foot in the water on a stone because she has been told all her life that she is beautiful and she believes it. This one first came out online at the Asian American Writers Workshop. It's the title of the book. The Experiment of the Tropics. As a nest among the trees, as a garden among the bigger garden of the sea, mountain, view, as a wish that were drawn to scale, so the idea became foldable, a mere scaffold discarded for that long-lasting thing, that revivalist thing style, which, as the master carpenter implied, went beyond road, port, nut, bolt, wharf, a nail in a railroad, a pipe that opened and closed, the central portico, the color and the texture of a solid colonnade of Indi's silence, which was her sense of water flowing across the experiment that was the tropics. A riverbank made private, a theater of night guards, a soda parlor of that foreign good whiskey tractor red tin can with the picture of a scarab and a Quaker oat acquisition, that American thing, the good old good cheese and grape. There was a tennis court in the club where you hit a ball and nothing returned. We munched on its brandy biscuit. We ordered 2 of it. What is more tempting than a hat tipped precariously on a knee? Not me. What is more touching than a hand laid gently at the edge of the sea? An arm placed over the shoulder of a stranger is surely just a sign of camaraderie. Certainly. For every man that stumbles into a room feeling for the door, asking himself, what did I wish to do here now that I've come? There is a man who stays inside. He had a good eye once, that one who squinted against the light that slipped through a crack the way a buckle would slip through a hole to keep the neck from turning, the tongue from falling. Spittle left on grit teeth when it swayed among the leaves, birds' wings flattened the banana trees as in the war of every man that chose not to speak to himself, but chose instead to draw his signature across a face the way a body disemboweled itself. No body disembowels itself. It takes 2 men. There are 14 ways to say I might. 50 ways to turn the tide. 2 kitchens, 1 dry. There is a picture of a room within a brightly lit afternoon where my aunt sat staring at the bougainvillea until the day it died. She fell to the ground 3 times but then stood up, while the man in the kitchen sat after the meal had been set, eyeing the silver she had gathered, the lacquer. 13, 14, she began each morning with hot water. She lived on a diet of fish. There was a chair, but she didn't sit on that. She was my aunt. I have no idea what that last poem was about, but it made it to the book. Just a few more, just 2 more. Standstill stasis. The way the river carried a boat. The way a boy and his shimmer stood at the edge of the stream, unthinking. Before the invention of the telephone. Before the construction of the tram. that would take the flowers down from that mossy mountaintop to that sweltering town. It takes a man willing to walk up and down a village to determine how long it would take the aster to wilt in the neighbor's garden. Inside a vase, there is a fruit plucked without asking, like a letter stuffed with one's thoughts fresh from the underbelly of not saying, unbruised, unpromised, after the war was lost, after the refrigerator upon invention was defrosted. Farewell, goodbye, but not really. Or a nod done out of instinct. Or a sir in the room still sleeping with his legs open this far into the morning when every other dear gentleman would be walking in the light. There was a ship and it was sailing. There was a group of men standing in line looking in the same direction, suggesting that a war was happening, but only somewhere far, beyond the sheen of a photograph of a sea seen on the edge of a hat, or the prow of a boat, which was really the sheen of me trying hard to be a boy, arm against my hip so only a splinter could tremble my lip. I would like to thank the designer of my dress for the ribbon around my chest, so in the event of any future misdemeanor, I will have the luxury of an apology with a flower on my heart. Farewell, goodbye, but not really. Imagine that you are out on a stroll merely, as in a game of kings and queens where you closed the flower, walk, and you opened the flower, walk. And then you turned around. Thank you very much.